You know what? Actually, let's go through DukeSloth's video.
I've
I like
seen
this
a lot
guy,
of
though.
discussion about New World's expansion that I'd like to weigh in on a little bit. Specifically the question if this is a true expansion. Or extending from that, if this is enough for an expansion.
You are enough.
Now, there aren't any specific requirements that an expansion needs to meet in order to be called an expansion, but what we can base this on is what the developers have said themselves. Because the developers specifically said that Brimstone Sands was not an expansion, but this, Rise of the Angry Earth, is an expansion. And the difference is that
Let's see. What would qualify as an expansion versus DLC? So Brimstone Sands wasn't really an expansion. It was more DLC. It unlocked a new region. It gave us a little bit more story. It gave us some new expeditions. Right? So I would say it extended on the game. You could, I guess, classify Brimstone Sands as a free expansion. I suppose, yeah, what's the difference between DLC and an expansion? I need to think about that one more. I don't think I have a definitive enough answer to spew out my disgusting opinion on this.
paying for it too. Due to that, the first thing that I'd like to do here is compare Brimstone Sands and Rise of the Angry Earth in terms of what they're offering. Both of them come with a new zone. In case of Rise of the Angry Earth, this is technically a reworked zone, but realistically it wouldn't have made much of a difference if they placed the new zone next to First Light or on top of First Light, because First Light wasn't used in the first place. So I just consider it a new zone in general.
True.
Both come with a new quest line in that zone, both come with a new expedition in that zone. Both come with a new weapon. We had the Greatsword with Brimstone Sands, and we have the Flail with Rise of the Angry Earth. Both come with significant combat and perk changes. I would say they are a little bit larger in the expansion overall, but they definitely existed in both. Both also come with a new combat item type. That was the Hard Rune for Brimstone, and now we have the artifacts.
I know
Both
nothing
also
about
come
artifacts.
with a zone overhaul, or rather multiple of them. I would argue that the ones for Rise of the Angry Earth are a bit bigger here, because Eden Grove is actually getting overhauls insofar that the entire settlement is being created and placed there. I would say that settlement is not as impressive as it could have been, but it's still a little bit more than what we got with Brimstone, especially because some repeatable late game areas in Eden Grove also got an overhaul. Both come with new resources and crafting changes. This especially affects crafting best in slot, with Brimstone Sands.
DLC can be anything like weapons, skins, and an explanation. And expansion implies there's more story content. Well, then you could say that Brimstone is technically an expansion because there was more story content. It was kind of disappointing how quickly the story of Isabella ended, and that there wasn't she wasn't really that significant of an antagonist to you. You just kind of saw her at the very end and then beat the shit out of her. I feel like she should have been there harassing and haranguing you all the way through the leveling system, way more than she actually was. Same with Thorpe. You see him every now and then, but not nearly enough. Now I'm going on a tangent. But for you, I suppose that means that expansion implies more story. It means advancement on the world itself. They interchange the term to excuse the crazy prices they put on stuff. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, they do that all the time.
We got the Golden Scarabs, and with Rise of the Angry Earth, we're getting the Prismatic Scarabs as well as the Dark Matter crafting. So again, a bit more here in Rise of the Angry Earth. Something we had shortly after Brimstone Sands, but would make it part of the expansion, were fresh start servers, and we won't have these this time. We will have new servers.
Yeah, because then people would jump into the fresh start server, boost the fuck out of their character the same way I did in the space of like a day. And then when they're at the top and they've got their speedrun done, they quit because their favorite streamer who's playing on the fresh start server is just done. And so because they're part of that community, they're done too.
Servers if there's enough demand for them, but no fresh start again. I personally think that not making fresh start servers with this expansion is the correct play based on what kind of expansion we're looking at here, but I can understand players that want to have fresh start servers as well, and this is something that they're not offering this time. But there are also a lot of things that Rise of the Angry Earth offers that Brimstone didn't offer. It comes with a mutator rework, it comes with a new trade skill being mounts, which is a very major feature. It comes with a level and gear score increase and everything that entails. It comes with an attribute capstone overhaul, Ward, Bane, and Resilient removal, which just fundamentally changes the game overall. Comes with a trade skill increase.
I wonder if they removed all the warding and stuff like that because people were just stacking the shit out of that, taking no damage, and then going easy mode on the game.
For all trade skills, not equally well done for all of them, but it exists at least. An influence race overhaul, a weapon overhaul for the musket, and a new faction tier, which is a minor thing, but it is another addition. What it doesn't come with that Brimstone Sands comes with is a lot of empty space with sand.
Yes.
I'm joking here, but I have seen a lot of people make the point that Brimstone Sands was bigger than the Elysian Wilds area, and that's why it's a smaller upgrade, but it's very dense, it's very condensed in terms of...
yeah, it's not size, it's content that matters. Brimstone Sands had a lot of empty space in it, which obviously it adds to the scale of the world, but it doesn't add to the content inside of the world to experience.
What it has to offer, and I'm pretty sure the quest line will probably be around the same length or longer, so I don't think the empty space should really be the biggest concern you have with the expansion. So I think if we look at this list overall, Rise of the Angry Earth does offer more than Brimstone Sands. But is that enough? Before we discuss that further, a reminder to subscribe and click the bell if you want to get notified of future videos about the expansion. And if you want to support me further, you can do so on Patreon and get some early trading and farming tips in return. In order to answer a bit if it's enough, I want to talk a little bit about things that the expansion does not offer. It doesn't offer any new raid. It doesn't offer a new PvP mode. It just has that territory control overhaul, which I would argue is not its own new mode. It only comes with one zone. It doesn't have multiple new zones like many other games do that have expansions. It doesn't come with significant skill tree changes for most weapons. There's a lot of bigger overhauls that could be done that simply weren't done here.
Okay, so I read that while I was listening to him. So basically, DLC is more of a catch-all term. I suppose all expansions are now DLC because all games are now digital, as opposed to going into a store and buying a disc that adds on to the original game.
Some of the things that were overhauled were also mostly done so on a surface level. For example, I think crafting is rightfully labeled as 5.3 internally. All of the resources are labeled as 5.3. It's not really a tier 6. There are some things that just haven't been fully completed. I discussed that in another video already. And you'll...
Yeah, but they'll probably get to that later. They're probably trying to flesh it out. I honestly... I think all of that's fine where it is currently in New World. I think this is just getting excessive. It's just about the service for me. I will bitch and gripe about that singular point until it's solved, and then I'll find something else to bitch and gripe about.
You'll notice that some things just were kind of rushed. Like, for example, the new resources, the trees and the ores and all that are just recolored versions of the previous tier. So it really doesn't feel like we're getting a whole new level of...
that sounds about right. Just shift the hue slider.
everything, but rather this is an extended level of many things. And that, to me, doesn't feel expansion-y. But my mindset when it comes to expansions is also that of a very different era when we had expansions in MMOs like World of Warcraft, which was completely different. There were way less in-between updates, but rather you had nothing for a long time and then you had one massive patch. And that is very clearly not how New World is generally designed, especially right now when they've built up this season system where you get consistent content updates every 3 months. I think when people hear the word expansion, many of them expect a significant overhaul to the endgame loop, which I guess is to some degree happening with Dark Matter, but really, you're going to mostly...
I like these ground indicators here, actually. Just looking at the gameplay footage here. I did, in a very old video, I bitched that the ground indicators aren't clear, so I don't know whether I'm running through an allied Froststorm or an enemy Froststorm until I'm already taking damage. It looks like they've fixed that, which I quite like.
Be doing the same thing.
It also lets me know exactly where I shouldn't stand based on the little circle on the ground.
For example, you're still going to run the same mutators that will not feel fundamentally different. They will be slightly more difficult on M3, but it's not really a massive overhaul in that regard. You're still going to be playing the same PvP modes for the most part. So there isn't some massive shake-up of the endgame loop, but rather...
So the endgame is actually technically just the same. They've just increased everything around the endgame. The content itself hasn't shifted. It's just more of the same content, or it's the content plus some gear stuff on it.
There's some nice additions in the form of artifacts and mounts. And it is a bit odd in so far that they set up a few systems that could have gone in that direction. If they invested a little bit more into the open world PvP, that could have been a bigger thing than I currently predict it to be at the end of the day. Or, for example, if they did the timed races for the mount to actually be between multiple players with a...
That's pretty cool. Yeah, if there were multiple players, that would be even better.
Leaderboard or something like that, then I think that could have been a very interesting and fun endgame activity, just something completely new that people would do over and over just to get hype.
Yeah, just steal the racing directly out of Guild Wars 2. That's an amazing idea.
On the leaderboards and win the races and get rewards for that, but they didn't really end up doing those things. That means I believe the expansion will be absolutely refreshing for people that are coming back after a long break, like for example someone who hasn't played since Brimstone or even longer, and will see the new arena maps, and will see the cross-world OPR, for example, on the PvP side of things, and explore all the new dungeons. Hasn't played Forge yet, for example. There's going to be plenty to do for them. They can even do the Sandworm raid, but it's a bit different for someone who has consistently played throughout the year, who will primarily end up getting new things to grind and level. It is obvious that with many of the overhauls and also some of the tech upgrades happening on the back end of things, we will be set up for a better future for New World overall, because I think there is a better system to build upon now. I don't think this is going to be...
I hope tech upgrades means upgrade server size. That's what I want.
The massive make or break that a lot of people expected with this expansion, me included. The player spike so far is much smaller than last year, and so far I haven't heard anything about any major advertising campaigns. Maybe they will do that right as the expansion drops, or maybe they just won't. Maybe they say, okay, we're adding some new things to the game, but it's not enough for us to massively hype this up because it's already getting hyped by too many people anyways, and we're just gonna ride this out and see how many people come back. What I think is most likely is that we see a moderate increase in player numbers that carries over a little better, because this time there is no massive drop-off afterwards because of 6 months of no content, but rather there is...
So, like, this rise, so he's probably going to say this now, but the rise isn't so important. It's the consistency after the rise that matters. If New World goes from having a consistent player base of 15,000 to a consistent player base of 20,000, 25,000, and it just sits there, that can be counted as a win, because it means that they're not at their all-time low. It means that they're starting to move in the right direction. That's what I'm interested to see, and we'll probably only see that like a month, 2 months from now, at its earliest.
Is Season 4 stuff already planned? There is a mutated trial and whatnot, so there will be something new for people to do just a little bit later, and I think that may be a better incentive for some people to stick around. I think Scott actually gave a very interesting answer here when he was asked if he sees the expansion as pay to win. He said he sees the expansion as pay to continue.
Yeah, no, it's pay to win. It's pay to win. You don't add things like a battle pass. You don't add things like little tokens to change the way your character looks that you need to buy individually. You don't get all of these things. You don't add all of these things without it causing someone to win. And you can tell it's pay to win because if someone doesn't have the expansion, this is normal for games, is if someone doesn't have the expansion and someone does, and they get into a PvP fight, the guy who's got the expansion is going to beat the shit out of the guy who doesn't. So how's the New World expansion going? Seemingly underwhelming. So far, it's like, it's good quality of life stuff. It's some nice changes and advancement on stuff, but it doesn't fix the big major issues of the game just yet. I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3, so I haven't looked into it as much. Yeah, I'm going to get back to my Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough as well, but I really wanted to check out New World today. I'm going to have to play both, like, whenever I can. Depends on when my child sleeps and I'm able to, be awake enough to be sitting here streaming.
That is how I'm looking at it. Sure, you can still access some of the things even if you don't buy the expansion, but generally, if you want to keep playing on the same level, then you'll have to buy the expansion, so pay to continue makes sense in that regard. And to me, as a consistent player, this has the vibe of a yearly sub. For a returning player that hasn't seen all the quality of life improvements, all the new features, this is going to feel like New World 1.0, it's going to feel like an expansion, so that's fine. But for me, as someone who has been continuously playing, I think it's more of I keep playing, I pay once, and that's fine with me.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, we have to keep in mind that we're talking about $30 here and $70 with the base game at this point. That's how much many other games these days cost without an expansion in the first place. And given all the updates that they've done, I think...
Listen, Ilgi, with how consistent I am with my streaming at the moment, my kid's going to university. My kid's graduating and having a family of her own before I finish Baldur's Gate 3.
making it fully priced at this point is very reasonable. So, does the expansion feel like an expansion? In my opinion, if you haven't played since before Season 1, then yes. If you take the season content and this expansion content together, that's enough to make a full expansion. And again, that is a bit of a problem with the season system because it means they kind of have to space out their content. If you have continuously played, then in my opinion it's more of a really big update. As someone who used to pay nearly half that for a monthly sub for World of Warcraft, I am very okay with this pricing. I think this is very much on the cheap end when it comes to a game that I consistently enjoy and have fun with. But it also means that I never want to see something like Gears Head Storage again, where we had to pay for a usability feature. And again,
Yeah,
I think they
that's
really should
disgusting.
give us some slots for free.
That's fucking disgusting to me that they use those features and everyone's gonna be like, it's not pay to win, it's pay for convenience. No, you're winning back your time. I'll say this a million times. If you are winning back any amount of time that you would otherwise not be spending doing bullshit maintenance stuff, then you are paying to win and you are winning back your time.
With the expansion just for continuing to support the game here. I think the new gear and artifact grind especially will definitely keep us busy for a while, so it's really up to Amazon not to drop the ball afterwards and continuously give us content that we can invest into so that we have reason.
You know, I wonder if all my legendaries are now invalidated by this update. I suppose we'll see. But yeah, it sounds okay. It sounds like still moving in the right direction, but still a lot to do. That's okay.
To log in. That is particularly true for the PvP side of things. I understand that they're a small team, but if they have the resources to consistently build new entire expedition maps, they also have the resources to at least make a new Outpost Rush map. Personally, I will stick with New World after the expansion as well, so don't worry about that, though I will make a second channel for Cyberpunk, but that's more of a passion project that I'll do occasionally on the side, I think. If you want to see me discuss the pros and cons of the expansion, I will link the videos for that right
not
here.
bad.
And if you want to see future New World videos, then consider subscribing and clicking the bell. If you'd like to support me further and help me continue doing this, and get some early trading tips in return, then you can do so on Patreon. Thanks to all of my patrons who already do exactly that. Thank you for watching. DukeSloth, out.
That's pretty cool. Okay, that was a good video. That gave me exactly what I needed to know. That told me everything I wanted to hear, and some things I didn't want to hear. But that's a good sign. Okay.